In every age, people have asked the same questions. What is the good life? How should we treat one another? What does it mean to be free or virtuous or just? What does it mean to be human? Western moral philosophy for beginners and Symposium Media takes you on a guided journey through the minds that shaped the moral backbone of the West, from the earliest Greek thinkers to the modern age. Lived stories of struggle, ambition, conflict, revelation, all unfolding against the sweep of history. If you've ever wanted to understand philosophy clearly, calmly, and humanly, if you want to know not just what these thinkers argued, but why it mattered, follow Western moral philosophy for beginners today and explore 10 more podcasts at Symposium Media. Plato, an Athenian philosopher from the classical era, is a foundational figure in Western moral philosophy. He was a student of Socrates and later became the teacher of Aristotle, and his work laid the groundwork for many philosophical inquiries that followed. While his life spanned a turbulent period of Athenian democracy and imperialism, the ideas he articulated about ethics, justice, and the nature of reality continue to resonate today. At the heart of Plato's thought are the dialogues he wrote, which feature Socratic conversations that probe ethical questions and explore the nature of virtue. Among his most important works in the realm of moral philosophy are the Republic, the Symposium, and the Gorgias. These texts delve into various aspects of ethics, governance, and human behavior, illuminating the various ways in which Plato viewed the world and humanity's place within it. In the Republic, perhaps his most famous work, Plato outlines his vision of a just society and the role of the philosopher-king. His theory articulates a form of governance that, he believed, could lead to the highest truth and goodness. Here, we encounter the allegory of the cave, a powerful metaphor illustrating the difference between the world of appearances and the world of reality. Plato suggests that most people live in a shadowy existence, only perceiving mere reflections of reality, while the philosopher seeks to ascend from the cave to grasp the true forms of virtue, beauty, and the good. Plato's moral philosophy is grounded in the idea of an objective moral order. He posits that abstract entities known as forms represent the true essence of various concepts, such as justice, beauty, and equality. In Plato's view, the form of the good is the highest of all forms, akin to the sun in the allegory of the cave, illuminating the other forms and making them intelligible. This belief in objective moral truths invites one to consider profound questions. If these forms exist independently of human opinions, then understanding them becomes a moral imperative. The pursuit of knowledge, virtue, and ultimately the good life is fundamental to Plato's ethical framework. In exploring moral ideas, we cannot overlook his concepts of justice and virtue in the Republic. Plato asserts that justice is intrinsically tied to the soul and the organization of the ideal state. He argues that justice, both in the individual and in society, involves harmony, a balance between the three parts of the soul: reason, spirit, and appetite. The rational part must govern the other two, reflecting a hierarchy that parallels his vision of a well-ordered society, where the philosopher-king represents reason, the guardian class embodies spirit, and the working class represents appetite. This idea raises questions about personal ethics in modern contexts, especially around leadership and authority. When we consider politicians or leaders today, we might ask ourselves, do they embody reason in their decision-making, or do they yield to appetites such as power and ambition that lead society astray? Plato's discussions of love and relationships are pivotal in the Symposium, another of his essential texts. Here, through a series of speeches delivered at a banquet, he examines the nature of love, culminating in Socrates' recollections of Diotima, a woman who teaches him about the nature of love as a ladder leading to the appreciation of beauty itself. This philosophical exploration of love culminates in the recognition that true beauty transcends physical attraction and leads to the beauty of the mind and spirit. For listeners today, this invites a reflection on personal relationships and the notions of love that dominate contemporary culture. How do we differentiate between transient attractions and deeper, more meaningful connections that nurture our moral lives? Now let's delve into some of Plato's core moral arguments and see how they apply to modern scenarios. One crucial argument centers on the idea of the philosopher-king, a ruler trained in philosophy who alone can grasp the forms and thus govern justly. This raises questions about the qualifications we seek in our leaders, not just in politics, but in various fields. In medicine, for instance, we entrust our health to those who have not only learned the technical skills, but have also affirmed moral and ethical commitments to their patients' well-being. How often do we prioritize wisdom and ethical understanding alongside expertise? And what happens when that balance is skewed? In the realm of technology, particularly concerning artificial intelligence, Plato's emphasis on knowledge and moral virtue serves as a lens through which we can examine our contemporary circumstances. As AI systems increasingly make decisions for us, who are we entrusting with this power? Are these systems designed with an understanding of moral good in mind? If they lack a grounding in Plato's ideal of the good, we might be steered toward decisions that reflect superficial rather than substantive understanding. How can we ensure that the forms of AI reflect virtues that align with the ideal good rather than mere functional outcomes? Plato also offers a critique of rhetoric and persuasion in the Gorgias, arguing that while rhetoric can be a powerful tool, its potential for manipulation must be tempered by a commitment to truth and virtue. He posits that true rhetoric should serve the welfare of the soul rather than pandering to the desires of the audience. This insight is increasingly relevant in today's media-saturated environment. The proliferation of disinformation and rhetoric that prioritizes persuasion over truth challenges our ability to discern ethical leadership and moral discourse. How do we cultivate critical thinking and discernment in ourselves and in our communities to navigate these complexities? Despite the enduring influence of Plato's philosophy, his ideas are not without critique. One significant criticism concerns the existence of the forms themselves. Later philosophers, including Aristotle, questioned their ontological status, arguing that forms cannot exist independently of the objects they represent. Aristotle suggested that what we consider forms may be intrinsic to the objects themselves. This critique weakens the argument for the objective moral truth that Plato champions. Moreover, existentialists and pragmatists later argued against the idea of fixed, unchangeable forms, positing that morality is more fluid, shaped by context and experiences. In discussing Plato's criticisms of democracy within the Republic, we encounter another major point of contention. Plato expressed concern that democracy, driven by the desires of the many, could collapse into tyranny if citizens become too focused on self-interest rather than the common good. This skepticism of democracy, particularly in the context of contemporary political discourse, raises important questions. Are we witnessing a crisis of values where partisan interests overshadow the pursuit of a just society? What implications does this hold for our collective moral responsibility in political engagement? Plato's moral philosophy resonates through the ages and connects to other significant figures in the Western moral tradition, like Socrates, who profoundly emphasized the importance of self-knowledge and virtue. Plato's approach underscores the relationship between knowledge and moral behavior. Socratic questioning remains a pedagogical tool in ethical discourse today, encouraging individuals to examine their beliefs and motivations. In contrast, Nietzsche, a later thinker, posed radical critiques of Platonic ideals, asserting the value of individual perspective and the subjective nature of morality. Nietzsche's challenge invites us to reflect on Plato's claims for objective truths and the implications this has for our understanding of personal ethics. As we contemplate the relevance of Plato's ideas in our own lives, we are prompted to ask difficult yet essential questions about our ethical frameworks and the decisions we make daily. What is the role of knowledge in shaping our values? How might striving for an understanding of the good inform our personal and collective actions? Through this lens, we can appreciate the rich legacy of Plato's work and explore how these ancient philosophical inquiries continue to illuminate the complexities of our contemporary moral landscapes. Continuing from where we left off, it's essential to look deeper into how Plato's conception of the philosopher-king operates within his broader framework of moral philosophy. Central to this idea is the belief that a ruler must ultimately be a seeker of truth, someone who has undergone a philosophical education that enables them to comprehend the forms. This requirement imposes a heavy burden on both leaders and citizens, compelling us to reflect on the qualities we prioritize in those we choose to lead us. To illustrate this, consider the current climate surrounding political leadership in democracies. The philosopher-king model resonates today, especially in debates about meritocracy and the qualifications for public office. The question emerges: should politicians be more than orators skilled in the art of persuasion? Should we not also ensure they possess a grounding in ethics and extensive knowledge of the issues at hand? Plato might argue that leaders should be selected based on their intellectual rigor and moral compass, challenging us to hold our contemporary political candidates to a higher standard. Moving to the implications of this philosophical model raises another vital point regarding accountability. In today's increasingly polarized political landscape, the tension between reason and passion can easily manifest. Citizens often gravitate toward leaders who reflect their immediate desires rather than those guided by a more profound understanding of the common good. This presents a challenge closely aligned with Plato's skepticism towards democracy, where personal interests can distract from collective well-being. Are we, as citizens, acting as guardians of Plato's vision of justice by demanding that our leaders embody reason and moral clarity? Or do we unconsciously enable more opportunistic figures whose appeals may lack the depth of ethical consideration? Plato's emphasis on intellectual virtue also links closely to the concept of education. In the Republic, he discusses the significance of education in creating a just society, proposing that an ideal education aims to mold the character of individuals such that they seek the good. He suggests a long-term and rigorous process of learning for those destined to govern, encompassing mathematics, dialectics, and even music, which he believed could cultivate harmony within the soul. This invites reflection on today's educational systems, particularly as we consider the role of civic education in preparing individuals for ethical decision-making in society. How do our current curricula serve or fail this purpose? Are we nurturing a generation that appreciates moral philosophy, or are we more focused on utilitarian skills that do not fully engage with philosophical inquiry? As we delve further into Plato's thoughts on moral behavior, his dialogues present the notion that virtue is knowledge, an assertion with vast implications for personal ethics. If one knows what is good, then one will do good. This assumption underlines a critical aspect of his moral framework. However, life's complexities raise questions about its validity. In modern contexts, we often encounter scenarios where individuals might understand the ethical implications of their actions, yet resist adhering to those principles due to fear, desire, or social pressures. This discrepancy between knowledge and action can be observed starkly within today's corporate environments, where ethical lapses continue despite clear guidelines highlighting ethical conduct. The notion that mere knowledge of what is right guarantees ethical behavior poses a dilemma that contemporary philosophers have explored extensively. One potential response to this challenge comes from virtue ethicists, who suggest that moral development transcends simple knowledge acquisition. They argue for the importance of character cultivation, that is, developing virtues through practice and habit, rather than solely relying on rational understanding. This approach finds ground in the practical teachings of Aristotle, Plato's own student. Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics emphasizes the notion of developing virtues such as courage and temperance through habituation and social context, offering a counterbalance to Plato's more knowledge-centric view. The tension between Plato's idealism and the more down-to-earth virtue ethics of Aristotle reflects a broader conversation on moral philosophy and underscores the difficulties of human practice in the face of high moral aspirations. This conversation remains relevant as we consider how we navigate our own moral lives. Are we approaching ethical issues from a purely intellectual angle, or are we engaging in a holistic process that cultivates our character alongside our understanding? Another compelling element of Plato's thought arises from his exploration of the concept of the tripartite soul, dividing it into reason, spirit, and appetite. This model serves as a metaphor for individual moral struggle, mirroring the larger societal battles between competing interests within a community. The internal conflict between these parts of the soul reflects the struggles we face in daily life, between rational decision-making, emotional responses, and instinctual desires. In the context of our routines, whether at work, in our families, or within social circles, we might ask ourselves how we can cultivate a balance among these competing forces. Are our decisions informed by rational thought, or do we find ourselves succumbing to emotional impulses or selfish desires? Exploring Plato's nuanced understanding of desire and moderation also allows us to draw connections to contemporary discussions about consumer culture and moral consumerism. In an age where desires are amplified by advertising and social media, the challenge becomes recognizing the difference between what we genuinely need and what our appetites lead us to pursue. In light of Plato's insight, we might consider how education can play a key role in refining our tastes, guiding us to connect with deeper values that transcend mere consumption. As we tune towards Plato's critique of rhetoric found in the Gorgias, we must remember that he warned against the seductive nature of persuasive language devoid of moral grounding. Here, he argues that rhetoric wielded without an ethical purpose can corrupt the soul, potentially leading individuals away from truth and justice. This poses an important reflection in our current media landscape, where the line between persuasion and manipulation becomes blurred. In an age rife with disinformation, Plato's insights beckon us to be discerning audiences. As consumers of news and public discourse, we must strive to distinguish between rhetoric serving the welfare of the soul, informed by truth, and rhetoric designed merely to exploit our desires. Philosophical engagement teaches us to scrutinize the narratives that surround us, to critically analyze the intentions behind persuasive messages. More importantly, it produces a community of individuals committed to truth and ethical expression. transforming passive consumption of rhetoric into an active, engaged pursuit of wisdom. Plato's emphasis on a soul's welfare encourages individuals not only to participate in discussions, but also to advocate for clarity in communication, understanding its effects on collective moral life. The reflections on Plato's approach to knowledge, leadership, education, and rhetoric set the stage for ongoing conversations about ethics within the Western tradition. Following on from Plato, later thinkers challenge and expand upon his ideas, continually drawing connections between knowledge and morality. For example, Immanuel Kant, over a millennium later, introduced his deontological ethical framework, emphasizing the significance of duty and moral laws that arise from rational will rather than knowledge of the good alone. Kant's focus on universal principles encourages individuals to act according to maxims that one would wish to become universal laws, furthering discussions initiated by Plato about the relationship between actions and moral truths. This historical chain invites us again to rethink our engagement with morality today. Are we taking conscious steps to develop an understanding of universal ethical principles? And how are we allowing those to shape our actions? As we grapple with the myriad challenges of modern life, from personal relationships to technological advancements, the call to seek knowledge and moral truth, urged by both Plato and later thinkers, remains relevant. As we conclude this deep dive into Plato's moral philosophy, we find ourselves prompted to reflect on how these ancient ideas persistently resonate in our lives. Plato urges us to engage actively and critically with the world around us, seeking not just a superficial understanding of right and wrong, but rather grappling with the essence of moral truths intrinsic to our shared humanity. By doing so, we pave the way for a richer examination of our decisions and the potential for leading fulfilling lives in pursuit of the good. How can you, in your everyday experiences and choices, embody Plato's vision of seeking truth, nurturing virtue, and striving for justice? In contemplating these questions, we invite you to continue this exploration, as the journey toward understanding ethics and morality is a timeless endeavor shared across generations. Through this search, may you find a clearer path toward your own ideals and a deeper connection to those you encounter along the way. Continuing our deep dive into Plato's moral philosophy, we must further explore his concept of the ideal society, as presented in the Republic. Central to Plato's vision is the idea of justice, not merely as a legal or social construct, but as an intrinsic virtue that permeates both individual lives and the broader community. For Plato, a just society is one where everyone plays their appropriate role, contributing to the whole in a manner aligned with their natural capabilities. This notion prompts us to consider how we evaluate fairness and justice in our own societies. In the Republic, Plato categorizes society into three distinct classes: the rulers, the guardians, and the producers. The rulers, or philosopher-kings, possess wisdom and the ability to comprehend the forms, particularly the form of the good. The guardians, often equated with the military or protectors of the state, embody spirit and courage, working to maintain order and defend the society. Finally, the producers encompass the working class, responsible for the economic and material needs of the community. Each class has its responsibilities and is expected to perform its function without overstepping into roles designated for others. This hierarchy illustrates a profound belief in specialization and the idea that harmony arises when everyone contributes according to their natural strengths. This structure raises significant questions regarding modern governance, questioning how we define roles and responsibilities within our political systems. In contemporary politics, we often see debates about who should lead and how leaders are selected. Plato might argue that the emphasis should not solely be based on popularity or charisma, but rather on a candidate's wisdom and moral character. Are we prioritizing the right qualities in our leaders? The philosopher-king archetype compels us to look closely at our elections and the traits that candidates exhibit. In an age of increasing populism, the challenge arises: how do we ensure that our elected officials embody the virtues necessary for just leadership? And how do citizens hold them accountable to these ideals? Moreover, Plato's allegory of the cave offers a vital lens through which we can examine the nature of enlightenment and self-awareness in governance. In the allegory, prisoners are shackled inside a cave, only seeing shadows cast on the wall, mistaking these illusions for reality. This represents the general populace, who may lack access to deeper truths. When a prisoner escapes and discovers the world beyond the cave, he realizes the profound existence of reality and the forms. However, returning to the cave to enlighten others proves to be a difficult task, met with resistance and hostility from those unwilling to abandon their comfortable illusions. This allegory reflects the role of education and philosophical inquiry in a democratic society. The philosopher-king, having glimpsed the truth, embodies the responsibility of educating the citizens. Yet, as Plato cautions, the more enlightened one becomes, the more challenging it may be to communicate profound truths to a society clinging to familiar beliefs. In our modern world, filled with misinformation and polarized realities, this allegory poses crucial questions about how we convey knowledge and facilitate understanding amidst resistance to new ideas. Are we prepared to challenge our own perspectives and help others emerge from their metaphorical caves? The challenges of enacting societal change and reform bring us to examine Plato's reflections on ethics in personal relationships and public life, particularly in the Symposium. Here, Plato explores the nuances of love, formulating love as a motivating force towards the good. Through the various speeches delivered at the banquet, Plato articulates the idea of ascending from physical love to the love of the intellect and the appreciation of beauty and truth. This progression serves not merely as an account of romantic relationships, but highlights the broader quest for knowledge and understanding. The essence of love, as Plato presents it, encourages individuals to move beyond mere physical attraction and seek deeper connections based on mutual admiration for wisdom and virtue. In an age defined by rapid change in interpersonal relationships, especially with the rise of digital communication, Plato's insights serve as valuable considerations. Are our modern relationships enriching our souls and pushing us toward the pursuit of truth and goodness? Or do they often lead us to superficial interactions that lack depth? By encouraging individuals to seek connections that resonate on a higher intellectual and spiritual level, Plato's philosophy invites us to redefine our understanding of love in today's hyper-connected world. Furthermore, Plato's examination of rhetoric in the Gorgias becomes increasingly relevant as we dissect the ethical implications of communication in society. He critiques rhetorical skill that prioritizes persuasion over truth, aligning it with manipulation and moral degradation. This critique compels reflections on our current media landscape, where individuals wield rhetoric with the intent to shape opinions and influence behavior, often without regard for truth. The tension between effective communication and ethical responsibility becomes crucial as we navigate discussions in public forums, social media, and even personal relationships. Revisiting Plato's critique of rhetoric encourages critical self-reflection. Are we discerning consumers of information? How do we navigate the complex interplay of persuasion and ethical expression, particularly as we engage with content that influences our beliefs and actions? By embracing Plato's insights, we can foster a culture demanding accountability from those who communicate. ensuring that dialogue remains grounded in sincerity and ethical considerations. While exploring Plato's thoughts, it is equally necessary to address their limitations. Critiques by later philosophers challenge the foundational aspects of Plato's theories, notably regarding the existence of the forms. Aristotle's critique of Platonic realism emphasizes that forms do not exist independently from objects themselves, but instead arise from the object's inherent properties. This notion underscores a more empirical approach, suggesting that knowledge is attained through observation and interaction, rather than through the abstract contemplation of eternal forms. Such critiques offer avenues for considering how our understanding of morality can evolve beyond rigid structures, embracing context and lived experiences. Moreover, as we grapple with the implications of Plato's ideal forms, we confront the fluidity of ethics itself. Modern philosophical discourse poses significant challenges to Plato's assertion of universal moral truths. Existentialists, for instance, argue that individuals actively create meaning and values in a world devoid of inherent essence. This contention invites reflection on the role individuals play in defining their ethical frameworks, allowing us to appreciate the complexities arising from personal circumstances rather than adhering strictly to objective ideals. The contrast between Platonic ideals and the existentialist approach serves as an important reminder of the dynamic nature of morality. It compels us to think critically about the intersection between personal experiences and universal ethical claims. In a world characterized by diversity of thought and opinion, how do we find common ground in our moral discourse while respecting the multiplicity of individual experiences? As we reflect on the historical lineage of moral philosophy, Plato's influence can be identified in various modern ethical theories that emerged in response to his ideas. Approaching the practical application of ethics through this lens can be profoundly illuminating. The discourse around moral relativism versus moral absolutism, for example, echoes the tensions that Plato navigated between his belief in objective moral truths and the challenges presented by the reality of subjective experience. In grappling with these moral landscapes, contemporary thinkers such as John Rawls build upon Plato's impetus to think about justice and fairness in society. Rawls' concept of the veil of ignorance seeks to create a framework for justice that considers the rights and opportunities granted to each individual, irrespective of their societal position. This modern reflection demonstrates how Plato's engagement with justice in the Republic continues to resonate, prompting discussions around equity, social structures, and the moral responsibilities shared by communities. As we navigate this robust ethical terrain rooted in Plato's ideas, we discover that the core questions he posed remain pivotal to our understanding of morality today. How we define justice, understand the nature of love, evaluate ethical communication, and consider the qualities we seek in leadership connect directly with the societal issues we face. By engaging with these diverse philosophical threads, we honor the legacy of Plato while adapting his insights to our contemporary context. In conclusion, diving into Plato's moral philosophy reveals a profound exploration of ethics, justice, and the human experience. His ideas compel us to reflect upon our society, relationship dynamics, leadership ideals, and the narrative structures that shape our understanding of truth and morality. As we navigate the complexities of our own lives in a rapidly changing world, his philosophical inquiries invite us to examine our commitment to knowledge, virtue, and the collective good. By fostering critical engagement with these themes, we take up the call to strive for a deeper understanding of ourselves, our communities, and the moral landscapes we inhabit. Ultimately, the journey into ethical inquiry that Plato encourages reminds us that we are not merely passive participants in the moral discourse of our time. Instead, we are called to be active seekers of truth, grappling with the nuances of our circumstances and striving for a life infused with ethical purpose. As we ponder the implications of his teachings, let us allow their echoes to inform our personal ethics and guide us toward the ideal good, illuminating a path for ourselves and those we encounter along the way. How can we embody this philosophy in our daily actions and decisions? The answers lie in our commitment to remain engaged, inquisitive, and steadfast in our pursuit of a virtuous existence.
Midnight rails under silver moon, dusty boots on a winding road. A shadow's the only friend I've known since she packed up and let me go. Empty whiskey bottle on the seat, her laugh still echoes in my bones. Saddle's heavy with memories. I ride alone where the wind still blows. Nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be. Nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be. Sunrise paints the horizon gold, but it don't warm a lonesome soul. Every town I pass feels half her size. Every trail's haunted by goodbye. I whisper prayers to open skies, hoping someday my heart'll find a brand new path beyond the pain, where broken hearts can heal in time. Nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be. Nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be. Nowhere else to be. Nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be. Nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be.